Welcome to the 2022 Range Rover, or in this case, the long wheelbase SV version. I'm on the Range Rover launch. It is an all-new generation of Range Rover, so it's got a new unibody, some new bones, new technology, and today I'm going to find out if it's worth the $104,000 and up, or in this case, up price point, and if it's still setting the bar or making the bar for luxury off-roaders. There's new competition in this segment. You got Bentayga, you've got Cullinan, you've got fancy Jeeps and BMWs and Alpinas and all kinds of things. But Range Rover set the bar a long time ago. We're going to find out if they still own the game. I drove two models on this trip, a first edition short wheelbase and this, the SV long wheelbase, which is what I'll focus on. The base engine offered is a 400 horsepower twin-charge six-cylinder, but both the first edition and the SV had a 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8, making 523 horsepower. A plug-in hybrid is due next year, and a full EV is going to follow in 2024. For today's video, I'm driving the SV, which is the most expensive one between the two. It seems Range Rover noticed the prices of the Urus and Cullinans and wants in on the action. Deservingly so, considering they practically invented the segment of luxury SUVs. A quick note, I only had 40 minutes with this car, so there wasn't enough time to shoot the B-roll and review it. So, the beautiful shots you see here were provided by Range Rover. That's the nitty-gritty. We will talk about a lot more on the drive, so I'm now going to waft my way through Napa Valley, which is where we are. What a fitting place, to test one of the most expensive, basically what is the name brand of luxury off-roaders, than a place where people that own a vineyard probably own a Range Rover. So there are a lot of new things with this generation. Part of it is the chassis, which is a lot stiffer than the old one. But they've changed a good amount of hardware as well. So one of the big things is the chassis control module. In the old one, it was hydraulic. Basically, this is a system that braces the chassis for a corner. And the new one is electric, 48 volt. Why that's so good is that electric motors react much more quickly than hydraulic ones, so they can be more specific and they can prime the car for a corner. That also works in concert with GPS navigation. So this car knows that there's a left-hand corner coming up, and it primes that outside stabilizer so that the chassis stays flat in the corner, which it does. The other big hardware change for the Range Rover is rear steer. It is standard on all models regardless of the engine or the wheelbase length. It's really effective. The long wheelbase car has the turning circle of the Range Rover Evoque, and the short wheelbase car has a turning circle similar to a Golf. So it shrinks them a lot. And we tested this on an off-road trail yesterday. I didn't want to do an off-road review because the trail was honestly fairly mild. Like the truck handled it no problem, and it is nothing compared to stuff we've seen Range Rovers do in the past. But what is also very impressive about the rear steer system is that it is invisible on the road. And I have driven cars where it is not invisible. The Ferrari Lusso always felt like it was drifting. Like in a corner like that one we just went through, I remember driving the Lusso and wondering if we were on ice or surprise water, or was I going too fast, and I wasn't going fast at all actually. And it was just that the system was a little too invasive, so it moved the back more than what would feel natural. They have gotten it really, really good here. It is invisible, and that is what you want. The engine is strong. It's twin turbo V8. Of course it's strong. It has a lot of torque, a lot of power. It gets you up to speed very easily. And you hear a little bit of rumble, just enough. You hear enough to remind you that yes, you did spring for the big engine, but not so much that it's intrusive or really noisy. The Range Rover is not about speed. They have the SVR ones, that's fine, that's something else. It's always been about going anywhere you want to go as comfortably as possible. And speaking of going anywhere you want to go, it has like 12 different driving modes. Of course, it's height adjustable suspension. It has air suspension. It has a electronic limited slip diff, and then the center locking diff. The off-roading we did was very, very mild. It was basically like a hiking trail through the woods, had a very little bit of mud to it, and some sharp switchbacks. I wouldn't say that it challenged the articulation ability of the truck very much. It definitely didn't challenge the tires or the grip at all. There are so many computers in off-roaders today that most of them manage tire slip really, really well. I have no hesitation thinking that this would do just as well as anything else. I'm sure it's more than capable for what the owners will bring it to, because most of the owners are just going to use it to go to work and the mall and their vacation house. I think fewer and fewer people are actually getting these things dirty. And honestly, all the new Range Rovers come with 23-inch wheels and tires, which to me is absolutely not what you want for off-roading. The profile is super low, you can't air down. And actually, that brings me to one of the other complaints I have about this car, is that those 23-inch wheels over broken pavement do not feel great. They shudder quite a bit. It sends that shudder through the chassis. The chassis is very rigid. They improve rigidity, which is great for response and safety and things. But what that means is that those vibrations get transferred to all of the different materials in this car. So I have felt or heard, seats wiggling and leather rubbing a very little bit. And that's not because they're not made well. I mean, everything in here is stitched like perfectly. The fit and finish is excellent. The seats are very comfortable. But when you have a bunch of seats with a bunch of electric motors and the car is moving around over uneven roads, something is going to have to move a little bit. I know that we need bigger brakes for bigger vehicles. Bigger brakes mean bigger tires and bigger wheels, but I wish it had 21s. I never thought I'd say I wish something had 21s, but 21s with a little bit of sidewall I think would really smooth things out a bit, especially when we were driving over this really kind of mottled canyon road. This car is very quiet inside, except over about 70 miles per hour on the highway. Both me and my drive partner, Al Vasquez of Al Vasquez TV, we noticed a lot of wind noise coming off the mirror. Now, the term "a lot" is a little loose here. The car is so quiet everywhere else. Even the tire noise is pretty quiet. But at 70 miles an hour, I thought the window was down. I thought my door had been left open a little bit. Kind of surprising in a car that looks, like it was shaped by water moving over a brick for 100 years. And the shape, I think, is really good. It's a good, beautiful evolution of the classic Range Rover shape, which has that dropping hood, the rising sill line. I mean, it looks really, really sharp. The front end hasn't been changed as much, I think, as the back. And the front kind of suffers from a copycat thing where Range Rover started it, Ford stole it, or was inspired by it, and then Range Rover has continued to evolve the front end. So the front doesn't look as different, but I think the back looks awesome. And they're very proud of their taillights that look black when they're not illuminated, and then brighten up obviously when you hit the brakes. And I just think the whole back looks really sharp. The evolution of this design is just getting better. They keep moving the ball forward, and I think that's really hard to do, because we car people are a fickle bunch. And if you take something we like and then you try to keep it going, better be careful. Better not change it too much or we'll get very upset. Right, 996 Porsche? Sorry about those headlights. Why are my wipers not on automatic mode? Jeeves. Speaking of Jeeves, another thing they have added here is Amazon Alexa. It's built in. Because why develop your own voice recognition system when you can just rent Jeff's? Let's test that out, shall we? Alexa, how far is the edge of space?
The Kármán line is the border that defines the boundary between the Earth's atmosphere and outer space, and is often called the edge of space. The line is about 100 kilometers above sea level, and sits in the lower thermosphere above the mesosphere.
That is correct. It's about 62 miles up. What's interesting is earlier I asked Alexa that same question, and she found an Amazon answer or something that said 50 miles. So, much like in the space race that is actually happening between Bezos and Richard and Elon, the edge of space seems to be up for debate, even in a car. The screens in here are really bright and very quick, which I like. They have this big 13.1 inch screen here and a 13.7 in front of me as the driver. The gauge is really clear. They still look kind of analog. They're round. And what's impressed me the most is that both of these screens are bright and like glare free. I mean, I've driven with the sunroof open all day today, all day yesterday, and there's never been a moment where I couldn't see the screen really clearly. And the center screen also reacts very, very quickly. But the other good thing is that they haven't stuffed all the controls behind the screen. So down here I still have my temperature. I have a hot button to go to the seat adjustment, adjusting, fans, stuff like that. Stuff that I tend to mess with a lot. I use that more than using automatic temperature control. I'm glad there are still shortcut buttons. But this does bring me to one of the cons about this car. The rotary dial to control your temperature setting, fan setting, and seat heater, it's all one unit, kind of like Audi. But you push or pull the knob to go between the three functions. So it's like push to go to the seats, pull to the middle to go to temp, and then pull again to go to the fan. And the pulling this knob, because it's not a big lip, it's a little cumbersome. It's kind of strange. So I'm sure that most people that own these just set things in auto, because that's kind of how life works if you're balling in a $200,000 Range Rover. I mean, you're working hard, but your finances and things are kind of working for you. Your money's working for you. They want the car working for them. But I find it to just be a strange physical motion. However, the touch points and design of this, I think, are gorgeous. The use of aluminum is really nice. It's not overdone. And then this car, which is the SV, the most expensive one you can get right now, or no, sorry, not the most expensive, but one of the most expensive trims. They have ceramic on, this armrest adjuster. It's on the shift knob here and some of the rotary dials. One, it looks awesome. It's the brightest white you'll ever see. Two, we know that it's incredibly durable and won't get scratched up. And it just feels nice to use, which is very cool. The car I had yesterday, which was the first edition, just had aluminum. It was also really, really nice looking inside, but it was white. The interior was white, which I think will get dirty immediately. I would definitely go with the brown if I had to choose. This has a Meridian sound system, 1600 watts. Sounds great, sounds really clear. And they've also really improved the noise canceling in this. There's actually speakers in the headrests that I guess perfectly play the counter frequency to what's going on outside, so that you hear less and less of it. And it works pretty well. The other day, my mom was complaining about me not being a doctor, and she was just standing on the side of the road, and when I drove by her in this car, I couldn't hear her at all, so it's pretty effective. The seat is really very nice. It's 24-way adjustable. I didn't know you could adjust the seat. Thank you. 24 ways. I actually, the night before the drive, I was trying to think of all the different ways you can adjust the seat, like front, back, angle, bolsters. You can adjust the shoulders in this. You can adjust the headrest, front, back, up, down. And the seat bottom is very clever. When I first got in the car, I thought it was too short and there was no thigh extension. I was like, wow, that is a huge error. Well, the seat bottom itself actually slides forward, the entirety of it. Very nice. However, if you are shorter in the legs, you might have a problem. I was sitting in the back of this with Lynn Woodward, and her feet weren't touching the floor. We were riding in one of the long wheelbase cars, and I think there's so many motors and things underneath the seat, it's mounted kind of high. And so if you have your kids in the back, or you're just a person who's like under 5'6" and doesn't have really long legs, your feet are going to literally be dangling, and that might be a little bit annoying on long drives.
Speaking of seats, the back seat is full of luxurious tricks and tech. Touch the screen and your seat reclines as a footrest reaches out to hold your loafers. The executive package, seen here, comes with a fridge and these electronically activated trays that turn your car into a very expensive picnic table. For my money, I would choose the 5-seat model instead. You still get the reclining seats, the touchscreen armrest, and the world's slowest cup holder. But it can also fold up in a pinch for a 5th seat. The cars also came with this strange analog selfie device. I wanted to make jokes about powdered confidence and all that, but when you consider that many of these cars are used as limousines, putting a vanity mirror in the back seat actually makes a lot of sense.
The steering in this, you're basically driving by sight. Can't feel the front wheels at all. I'm not here to say that this has lacks steering feel, so you won't want to drive it at an autocross course. Obviously, that's not what this is for. When I noticed it most is when we were doing the off-road trail. I had turned the wheel, a full rotation, and I just found it hard to feel how much the front wheels were gripping in the mud and which direction they were really pointed. So if you're driving in the snow, for example, it just might make it a little bit more challenging. Another new big thing for Range Rover is the 3rd row. The market for this car has been asking for a 3rd row for a long time. Lots of other SUVs offer a 3rd row. I mean, they've been selling a long wheelbase one for a while, but that was like the executive limousine, for you to ride in the back and be chauffeured around. So now they have a 3rd row, makes it a 7-seater. They think this is going to be the most popular spec, and pre-orders are showing that.
Now, I tried to sit in the third row and my skull hit the roof. They said, no, it's good for people up to 6 feet tall. I was like, well, I'm 5'10", and it's not just the hair that's hitting the roof. I had to sit like this. So if you're over 5'9", I recommend the trips being very short, or I recommend that you fight your way up the hierarchy of that group so that you can sit in the middle or the front seat.
Lastly, let's talk money. This long wheelbase SV starts at $218,000, and this one was optioned to over $250,000. The paint is $12,000. The 4-seat executive package is an extra $20,000, and the wheels and the white ceramic are over $3,000 a piece. Personally, I recommend getting the smaller 22s, saving some change and improving the ride. Yes, $250,000 is a lot of money, but that's $100,000 less than where a Rolls-Royce Cullinan starts. But you don't need to spend all the money. Even the cheaper models were sublime. The Range Rover has always been about luxurious, all-weather transportation and signaling status. Every model I drove was comfortable, stunning inside and out, and looked the business. In the battle for king of luxury SUVs, the Range Rover is absolutely still a contender.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.